Folks, I am so happy to welcome back to As the World Churns my friend, Dr. Jonathan Metzl. You know him as the author of the New York Times bestseller, Dying of Whiteness, as well as his other New York Times bestseller, What We've Become, as well as all of the talks, interviews that he does with so many people, including myself, on a regular basis. Jonathan, we are 6 months in to the Trump regime, 6 months in. And I want to get your thoughts on how you've been feeling, experiencing this moment, talking about this moment to your students at Vanderbilt and on your travels. 6 months. How you feeling?
Is 6 months? Is that right?
Yes.
Like, it's, it's funny because I was thinking back to I was just trying to imagine I teach this class, COVID and Society is one of the classes I teach at Vanderbilt. We do this assignment where we tell the students to go back to their pre-pandemic self, like find some excerpt of themselves from before the pandemic, listen to your voice like it sounded before the pandemic, watch a video or clip or Instagram, TikTok, something of that, and then write one page talking to yourself back then, telling yourself then what you know now. And it's a intense exercise, right? But it's kind of like, we made that joke on this when I talked to you the last time, but think about the guy who lived through the 3 years of what became the Hundred Years' War. And he's like, I can't believe I lived through 3 years of this shit already, not knowing that there's 97 more years to come. And so I do think there's an increasing acceptance that we're in this is kind of our reality now. But it's just funny to think about even before even before the election. I was looking back on some interviews I did before the election, and so part of what you learn in that experience is that things are unexpected, things are on different kinds of trajectories. We narrate our lives often based on what's happened before, but often what's coming is more intense, but also that things that seem just freaking bonkers, if I can say freaking, um, are become your normal reality, right? And so even from honestly for me, the Trump stuff is not super surprising. He told everybody this is what you're gonna do,
Yep.
and this is what he did last time, and this is who he is. But for me, if I had to think what is the reality that I could not have possibly imagined, I have to say it's the division on our side. I mean, it's
Mm.
actually the fact that we're so fractured. I just can't imagine like before it was like, oh, Trump's going to win, and then we're going to do the march, and then we're going to do the thing, whatever. But whoever's pulling the chains here is really good at fracturing us. And now you see it happening on the other side. Like somebody's turning half of MAGA against the other half of MAGA. And so I feel like we're caught up. I mean, the issues obviously are real, but I just feel like it's the division on our side that is leading to isolation, mistrust, like we're kind of cannibalizing. And to me, that is the by far the biggest risk is how can we think about our alliances in a way that is are going to resist what's happening now. Do you have that feeling also?
I'm gonna say, so two things. One, I want to come back to your pre-COVID exercise because I think that even as you were saying it, I was like, shit, that's really wild, and I should do that. And look, I mean, I've done so many recordings. You and I have done so many recordings. I wonder what it would be like to listen to 2019 Danielle, 2019 Jonathan, and then fast forward to 2025, and like you said, listen to the changes, your voice, conversation, like all of these things. I think that would be a wild thing to do. So that's one. I want to come back to that and like what has come up for your students. But I think about the fracturing a lot. And today I just did Democracy-ish with Waj, and that's what we were talking about, was the fracturing that's happening with MAGA with regard to trust and the Epstein files and like all of these things, these fissures that they planted, they created, right? They created this conspiracy theory, and then now they are being eaten by their own creation. With regard to Democrats, however, you and I are going to have a differing opinion. And my feeling is that I absolutely do not trust Democrats. I absolutely do not trust the establishment. I actually do not want there to be a coming together. I do want there to be a breaking apart. And the reason I say that, and I've said it on this show and so many others, is because I have worked as a Democratic strategist. I've worked on Capitol Hill. I have worked for progressive think tanks. I have like been inside of, the Beltway and this work for nearly 20 years. And what has come to pass for me over the last 10 is that Democrats are a large reason as to why we're here. And their inability to let go of their billionaire benefactors, their inability to decide to actually listen to the people instead of try and control the people. And they are revealing themselves, particularly right now in New York City, as Cuomo just announced, guess what? He's still running. Even though New York City said, guess what? We don't fucking want you. We don't care about your legacy name. We don't care about, what you've done and how you're trying to find your way back into the grips of power. And yet all the establishment who kicked him out several years ago because of his grifting, because of his dealings with women, all lined up behind him. Why? Because they don't want to back the progressive. Why? Because it threatens their own power. And so for me, when I think about the breaking apart of the Democratic Party, I'm saying good.
You could see me chomping. I was literally chomping at the bit, but I'm not going to turn the tables and interview you. Even that's what I want to
Do
do.
it.
No, because I want to know. And let me just say, first in his defense, like Cuomo was a changed man after the ayahuasca ceremony, and no, I'm
Is
just
that
kidding.
right?
But I will say that, like, what does that breaking apart mean? Like, what does it mean? Like, what does it mean? If because it's you can say like, I mean, there are two parts that I think complicate that. Number one is, does that mean we fracture and tribalize more? Does that mean other people get power and then they're trying to control other people? Because beyond just their question of power, like if we break apart, somebody's going to emerge as being in control, and then their job is going to be to dictate things for other people. And so it's not like we're going to break apart in the name of a more egalitarian society. So that's question A you can answer. Or question B you can answer is, isn't that breaking apart also being manipulated? Like it is true that maybe the chickens have come home to roost because of this Epstein thing. But it's also probably true that some bots and some Russians and some other people are manipulating the algorithms to turn MAGA against each other, which hasn't happened before. So there also is an externality of kind of this kind of division showing up in ways that are incredibly more than happenstance, I'll say, in a way. It serves somebody else's interest. And so it's not like it's not, I'm not denying what you're saying, but it's not like it's just happening organically. It's also that there are bigger forces at play of this kind of breaking apart into a million pieces. We saw it before the election with Kamala Harris. We've seen it a bunch of other times. And so you can pick whichever one of those two you want to answer.
And but here's what I'll say. I'll take the manipulation piece. We've been manipulated, right? Like America is the master manipulator of the larger global society and has been, right? Since its inception, right? We've all been indoctrinated into a certain degree to understand these characteristics that we thought were foundational to the morals and the values of this country that are not actually true, that were just based on a series of lies that we were told was the American story, and we understand that's not. I do believe that there is a manipulation that has been happening around MAGA for the last 10 years, both external and internal, both organic and inorganic. The fact is, though, is that when you tell people not to trust their own eyes and not to trust what it is that they hear and they see, is that guess what? Eventually they start not to trust you either. The person that told them that like everything was a lie. And so where we are is I think that we are in the midst of the great crumbling of the American empire. I think that a lot of things are being revealed. I think that a lot of truths are being revealed. I think think that there has been tons of manipulation by both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party on behalf of a billionaire class that was manipulating them to their own needs, right? And now we all see that. Well, wait a minute. You've been taking money from all the same people, but telling us like two different stories. Democrats telling us to be grateful for the crumbs that we get and putting on a cosplay show of resistance. And then Republicans bearing their true selves, right? Like taking off their hoods and showing the world who they are. So, yes, everyone is being manipulated, right? I go back to my favorite scene from The Devil Wears Prada, where she's talking about the color cerulean and she's saying, like, you don't even know what you like. What you like has been chosen for you by a group of people in this room. Like, that is the truth of the world. And I think that more people are recognizing that than have ever recognized that before. There is a collective awakening that's happening. So for me, what is the great fraction? I don't care. I just care that it's happening because I know now that the people that I had actually put my faith and trust in over the last 2 decades of my political career, I do not trust. And I realize do not have my best desires and needs at heart, that they have consistently shown me over and over again what they're really about. And it's not the people.
Well, but the question then is like really, where does that leave us? By the way, we're gonna run out of time before I talk about my trip to Europe, um, stuff like that. But I mean, isn't there a point where we're gonna have to negotiate with people in many different tribes, some of whom we agree with, some of whom we don't? The fantasy of burning it all down, we're great at the burning, but then what comes next? I mean, I'm just thinking so much about the my book about guns,
Hmm.
where we were so great at developing all these policies that would have, we never admitted it, taken guns away from certain people who really care about their guns. My book, which now going back to calling How We Lost, which really was that was the original
You
title.
changed the title?
I mean that they wouldn't let me call
I
it
know
that.
they wouldn't let you
I
do
could
it.
call it,
Yeah.
Kumbayaville. But now I'm going back to the original title because the whole idea was liberals. I had an idea of what gun owners should do, which is believe in public health. Public gun owners saw public health as incredibly intrusive and controlling for a government they didn't believe. And so then liberals, when gun owners didn't play along, they said there must be something wrong with you. You don't have common sense because we are the arbiters of common sense. And so part of the story is it's no wonder for me gun control failed because public health is a value that you believe in government, you believe in cooperation, you
Mhm.
believe in a higher power, whatever the hell. And so, but we never, that wasn't their viewpoint, right? That wasn't their world. And so to really get like gun safety, what I argue in the book, as you know, is we really have to take seriously the concerns of many conservative gun owners and then work with them for their version of safety, which might be a totally different paradigm than ours. But there was a day after for me, which is we have to understand that there are other paradigms other than public health that function for a lot of the country. They don't, because public health implies governments and they mistrust the government. Now, that seemed crazy 3 years ago when I wrote it, but now many people on our side mistrust the government and it doesn't seem that crazy because the tables are turned. And so isn't there a day after where you have to like is the idea of the of the crumbling or burning it down or whatever that it all falls apart and then we all like have our little like fortified neighborhoods, or is it that ultimately we figure out new ways of engaging with each other? Is it that we want to, I mean, how does this not end up in a power vacuum just given how things are is kind of
I
the
mean,
question.
we're already in a power vacuum. Like,
Yeah.
I think that that's the thing. It's like, how do you expect to come together when people are just finally starting to realize that they've been bamboozled, right? Like, there can be no great coming together when what is being revealed to us most deeply, using New York City as an example of what is happening between Mamdani and the Democratic establishment, is that when you are seeing things through a lens that is not rose colored anymore, you have to reckon with what you've been taught. You have to reckon with what has happened and unpack that before you can even begin. It's like going to therapy. I go to therapy for one reason, right? Like I want to understand myself better. I want to understand my patterns so that when they show themselves, I can disrupt those patterns. But first, I have to actually examine what those patterns are and how they were showing up in the first place. So to me, to jump to the place of reconciliation and how we speak to each other, we don't really even know what language we're all speaking right now because we've become so fractured, both by outside manipulation, but also by things that we haven't wanted to reconcile with as a country, right? Which is our attachment and our need for racism, which is our attachment and our need for misogyny, which is our attachment and our need to always have an oppressed other in order to keep certain power structures like intact. And so I think that you have to understand that truth before you can even begin to think to yourself, like, what does it mean to move forward? Like, there has to be a breaking apart first.
Well, what about, I mean, to use the New York example, like, I mean, obviously, Mom Donnie's gonna win, and so
But see, you say obviously,
okay,
how?
fine, yeah,
We have billions of dollars are going to be poured, millions of
okay,
dollars are being
okay.
poured into this, so we
Let's
don't really know.
But I'm saying, let's say Mamdani wins. What about people who disagree because they're uncomfortable with socialism or with his stance on the Intifada or because of the taxation? I mean, aren't there going to be people who just totally disagree with what he's doing, right? And so the question is like, is the role then to bridge those divides? Is it like we're in power now? I mean, I guess it's my concern. I don't mean this probably isn't even a question. My concern is the tables just flip and then we just are seesawing back and forth of like zero sum who has the power and stuff like that, if that makes
But
sense.
that's we've been see, here's my thing. We haven't actually been seesawing back and forth between two distinctly different factions. We've been seesawing back and forth between the same power manipulated structure that is owned by the same group of like 10 billionaires.
Mm.
So if Mondani wins, that is actually a extraordinary shift and breaking of a seesaw that has been balancing back between two parties, one that has become overtly racist and the other one that's just racist when they need to be. Hence Gillibrand's anti-Islamic screed that she went on, but somehow she still has a fucking job, but she's a Democrat, right? Like, oh, it's not so bad. But when Nancy Pelosi throws a bunch of women of color under the bus, it's just like, oh, she's a strategist and this is really about the whole party. Is it, or is it racism? So, like, if Mondani wins, that is the severing of a seesaw that's been balancing itself between two parties that have been in it for themselves for different reasons. And then we can have a conversation if, in fact, he's able to create a government. And I'm not saying that he's going to be able to, but if he's able to get people who have been disaffected by city government to actually join city government, right? To actually break apart these structures that were put in place, the pay to play with the hotel industry and the taxis and the Ubers and the this, that, and the other thing, and restructure in a way that is people centered, then that is going to be an incredible reckoning and like a case study to follow for years to come. But there's a lot of ifs that are there. But I think that the possibility of him going from zero recognition to now being stopped every two steps that he takes on the street is an exemplifier of this awakening that is happening where people are like, they both fucking lie. And you can't tell me that this guy is an anti-Semitic and tell me this and use all the same tropes and bullshit that you've been doing because now I'm hip to the patterns that you all rock with. And I don't want to be a part of them anymore. So it's like, for me, that's the people saying, okay, so they both suck. So we're going to try something radically different. And that's always what ends up happening when you get to a place of people being fed up enough.
I mean, something big is happening because it's happening in Tennessee also. It's not just here, it's happening in a lot of different places. And so it'll be interesting. I mean, I'll be going back to Tennessee in a couple of weeks. I know we're just probably out of time here, but I would love to just keep tracking this, because there are so many I mean, it's funny because like even on WOKAF for years, you and I would
Hmm.
talk about what does it mean to burn it all down. And I guess I guess like I still am an institutionalist in a certain kind of way, in that I'm just worried about anarchy, for example. And so I guess the question is just like kind of what does that mean for institutions? What does that mean for building? What does that mean for collaboration? And I've actually seen so many of these issues play out on the right as I've been studying the right for 20 years. So it's interesting to see this conversation happen now, predictably, I think in certain ways on the left.
Well, let me ask you this one last question, though, because I want to go back to the exercise that you had your students do. What comes up for them, right, when they're looking at these two different versions of themselves and the two different versions of society that has been created in in the time that they're coming into understanding themselves and the country and all of these things? Because you teach undergrad, right? Like, so they're young. What comes up for them?
It's always a version of I can't believe how naive I was. And that's good or bad, right? That's good because maybe the world's more complicated than they realize, but it's also bad because maybe that means the world is becoming less safe or more violent or something like that. But it's always a version of like I was so naive back then. I didn't even before I could even conceptualize that there was going to be a pandemic or going to be whatever is coming next, you know? And so it's some version of that, which maybe happens anytime you do an exercise like that. Maybe that's just the automatic outcome, but it is a kind of version of I was so naive and the world was easier than it was easier for me then or something like that.
Mm. Well, we will leave it there today, my friend, but we'll continue this conversation because it is an incredibly important one to be having right now. Thank you, Dr. Jonathan Metzl, for making the time for As the World Churns.
Anytime. And I had a great time in Europe, so I'm happy to talk about that also. Great. Keep talking.